Tab Story 1. In the remote village of Kolimskaya, nestled in the frozen wilderness of Siberia, a typical school day took a harrowing turn that would forever be etched in the memories of its students and teachers. The temperature was biting, but the sky was clear and the children were enjoying their outdoor lunch break, bundled in thick coats and scarves. Laughter echoed across the snow-dappled playground as they played games and swapped stories. Anya Petrova, the school's head teacher, stood near the steps of the main building, supervising the children. It was her favorite time of day, watching her students' carefree joy amid the harshness of their surroundings. But the peaceful atmosphere was shattered when she spotted a hulking shape emerging from the edge of the nearby forest. At first, she thought her eyes were deceiving her, but as the figure lumbered closer, her blood ran cold. It was a bear, a massive Siberian brown bear, its thick fur glinting in the pale sunlight. This was no ordinary bear. The creature's gaunt frame suggested it was hungry, possibly driven from its usual habitat by the scarcity of food during the harsh winter. It was rare for bears to approach human settlements, especially during this time of year, when they were typically in hibernation. Anya's heart pounded as she realized the gravity of the situation. "Everyone inside, now!" she shouted, her voice sharp with urgency. The children froze for a moment, their games forgotten as they turned to see what had alarmed her. Then, chaos erupted as they scrambled toward the school building. Anya ushered them inside, herding them like a frantic shepherd protecting her flock. Inside the school, the staff quickly sprang into action. Viktor Kuznetsov, the school janitor and a former hunter, locked the main doors and rushed to secure the windows. Anya called the local authorities, her hands trembling as she relayed the situation. The village's wildlife response team was small and underfunded, but they were the school's only hope. Meanwhile, the bear continued its approach, crossing the snow-covered yard with unsettling determination. Its breath steamed in the frosty air, and its powerful paws crunched through the snow. The students, now gathered in the main hall, peeked through the windows, their faces pale with fear. The youngest ones clung to their teachers, some sobbing quietly. Ivan Chernov, the school's physical education teacher, took charge of keeping the students calm. "Stay away from the windows," he instructed firmly. "We're safe in here. The building is strong." But even as he spoke, he couldn't shake the unease creeping up his spine. He had encountered bears during hunting trips in his youth, and he knew how unpredictable they could be, especially when desperate. He said, the bear reached the playground, sniffing the air and inspecting the area where the children had been moments before. It seemed to hesitate, its dark eyes scanning the surroundings. Then, to the horror of those watching, it turned its attention to the cafeteria wing of the school. The scent of food wafting from the building must have drawn it closer. With a force that shook the walls, the bear charged at the cafeteria's large windows. Glass shattered as its massive body broke through, sending shards flying in all directions. The sound was deafening, and the students screamed in terror. Teachers worked frantically to usher them further into the building, away from the cafeteria. In the chaos, Anya stayed remarkably composed. She called Viktor to the hallway, her voice steady but urgent. "We need to keep it contained," she said. "If it gets into the main building, we'll have no way to protect the children." Viktor nodded grimly, grabbing a fire extinguisher as a makeshift deterrent. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The bear, now inside the cafeteria, began rummaging through the lunch tables and storage areas. It overturned chairs and scattered trays, its growls echoing through the halls. The noise was terrifying, a primal reminder of how out of place this wild creature was in their world. Anya couldn't help but think of how thin the barrier was between civilization and the untamed wilderness. Minutes felt like hours as they waited for help to arrive. Outside, the faint sound of a snowmobile engine grew louder. The village's wildlife response team had arrived, led by Sergei Volkov, a grizzled man with decades of experience handling dangerous animals. Sergei and his team carried tranquilizer guns and nets, their faces set with determination. Two teams had. Sergei assessed the situation quickly, speaking in low tones to Anya and Victor. "We'll need to lure it out of the building. Shooting it with a tranquilizer indoors is too risky. It could panic and cause even more damage." Anya nodded, her mind racing. "What can we do to help?" "Stay with the children and keep them calm," Sergei replied. "We'll handle the bear." The team set up a bait station outside the cafeteria, using a slab of frozen meat to draw the bear's attention. Then, they positioned themselves strategically, tranquilizer guns at the ready. Inside, Anya and the teachers kept the students as far from the cafeteria as possible, singing songs and telling stories to distract them from the terrifying sounds coming from the other side of the building. It wasn't long before the bear caught the scent of the bait. It paused its rampage, sniffing the air. With a low growl, it turned and lumbered toward the shattered windows. Sergei and his team held their breath as the bear climbed back outside, its massive frame illuminated by the fading afternoon light. The tranquilizer guns hissed softly as the team fired, each shot finding its mark. The bear roared in surprise, twisting and turning as the sedatives took effect. Within minutes, its movement slowed, and it collapsed onto the snow with a heavy thud. The team approached cautiously, ensuring the bear was fully sedated, before securing it with nets and ropes. Inside the school, the tension finally began to lift. Anya and Ivan hugged the children, reassuring them that the danger had passed. Victor, still holding the fire extinguisher, let out a long sigh of relief. The bear was transported to a wildlife rehabilitation center, where it would be monitored and eventually relocated far from human settlements. Sergei later explained that the bear's behavior was likely driven by extreme hunger, a consequence of dwindling food sources in its natural habitat. The incident served as a stark reminder of the delicate balance between humans and wildlife in this remote corner of the world. In the days that followed, the school became a hub of activity. Journalists arrived to cover the story, and wildlife experts held workshops to educate the community about living safely alongside Siberia's magnificent but formidable creatures. The students, though shaken, gradually returned to their routines, their resilience a testament to the strength of the human spirit. For Anya Petrova and her staff, the ordeal reinforced their commitment to protecting their students at all costs. And for the village of Kolimskaya, it was a day that underscored both the beauty and the danger of their wild, frozen home. Story 2. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the forest as Emily and Sarah laced up their running shoes. The two friends had always shared a passion for the outdoors, and this particular trail had been on their bucket list for years. Nestled deep in the heart of Grizzly country, the path promised breathtaking views, the crisp scent of pine, and a sense of solitude that felt increasingly rare in their busy lives. Emily, a cheerful and determined woman with a contagious laugh, glanced at Sarah as they stretched near the trailhead. Sarah, slightly more reserved but no less adventurous, gave her a nod and a small smile. The forest around them was alive with the hum of insects, the chatter of birds, and the occasional rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. It was the kind of day that made them both feel alive and connected to something far greater than themselves. "Ready for this?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with excitement. "Absolutely," Sarah replied, tightening her ponytail. "Let's make it count." The first mile of their run was peaceful, the trail weaving through towering evergreens and patches of vibrant wildflowers. They chatted about their plans for the upcoming weekend, their families, and their shared dream of completing a marathon together. The rhythmic sound of their footsteps on the dirt path was almost hypnotic, a steady beat that matched the pulse of the wilderness around them. As they rounded a bend, the trail opened up to reveal a stunning vista. Rolling hills stretched out before them, blanketed in a lush carpet of green that seemed to go on forever. The mountains in the distance were capped with snow, their jagged peaks piercing the azure sky. Emily paused, her hands on her hips as she took in the view. "This is why we do this," she said, her voice filled with awe. Sarah nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon. "It's perfect," she agreed. "Let's take a moment." They stood there in silence, their breathing slowing as they absorbed the beauty of their surroundings. It was a reminder of why they loved these runs, why they kept coming back to the wilderness, despite the challenges it sometimes posed. It was a moment of peace, of connection, of gratitude. The trail soon dipped back into the forest, the canopy above them thick and dappled with sunlight. The air was cooler here, carrying the earthy scent of moss and damp leaves. Emily and Sarah settled into a comfortable rhythm, their conversation giving way to a companionable silence. The only sounds were the crunch of their shoes on the trail and the occasional call of a bird overhead. About halfway through their run, Emily suddenly stopped, holding out an arm to signal Sarah to do the same. Her brow furrowed as she looked ahead, her head tilted slightly, as if listening for something. Sarah followed her gaze, her heart quickening. "What is it?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily didn't answer immediately, her eyes scanning the underbrush. "I thought I heard something," she said finally. "Probably just a deer or something." They waited for a moment, the forest around them eerily still. Then, as if on cue, a squirrel darted across the trail, its bushy tail flicking behind it. Emily exhaled a soft laugh, shaking her head. "See? Just a squirrel," she said, resuming their run. Sarah smiled, but a lingering sense of unease stayed with her. She'd always been the more cautious of the two, her instincts honed by years of exploring the wilderness. Still, she pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the path ahead. The final stretch of the trail led them along a babbling creek, its clear waters sparkling in the sunlight. Emily and Sarah slowed their pace, their conversation picking up again as they admired the scenery. The creek's gentle melody was soothing, a reminder of the harmony that existed in the natural world. "Let's stop here for a bit," Emily suggested, motioning to a large flat rock near the water's edge. Sarah agreed, and they settled onto the rock, their legs dangling over the side. Emily pulled a water bottle from her pack, taking a long drink before handing it to Sarah. They sat in comfortable silence, the sound of the creek and the rustling leaves filling the air. "I could stay here forever," Sarah said, her voice soft. Emily smiled. "Me too. But we should probably head back soon. Don't want to lose daylight." Reluctantly, they got to their feet, and began the journey back to the trailhead. The forest seemed different now, the shadows longer, and the air cooler. They quickened their pace, their earlier light-heartedness giving way to a sense of urgency. As they ran, Sarah's unease returned, stronger this time. She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes scanning the trail behind them. Emily noticed and gave her a questioning look. "You okay?" she asked. Sarah hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, just something feels off," she admitted. Emily's expression softened. "We're almost there," she said reassuringly. "Just a little further." They pushed on, the trail narrowing as it wound through a dense thicket. The trees seemed to close in around them, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out much of the fading sunlight. The forest was quiet now, the kind of silence that felt heavy and unnatural. And then it happened. A sound broke through the stillness, a low, resonant noise that sent a shiver down their spines. Emily and Sarah froze, their eyes wide as they turned toward the source of the sound. Standing not far from the trail was a massive grizzly bear. Its eyes locked onto them. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The bear's presence was overwhelming, its sheer size and power a stark reminder of their vulnerability. Emily and Sarah exchanged a glance, their unspoken bond stronger than ever in that moment. "Stay calm," Emily whispered, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Sarah nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. They slowly began to back away, their movements deliberate and measured. The bear watched them, its head tilting slightly as if assessing the situation. But in the unpredictable world of nature, not all encounters end in harmony. Despite their attempts to retreat and give the bear space, something shifted in the air. The bear advanced, its massive form closing the distance between them. Emily and Sarah tried to remain calm, their instincts urging them to run, but they knew better. Still, the bear's focus did not waver. What followed was a blur of motion and sound, the forest erupting into chaos. In those harrowing moments, Emily and Sarah faced the full force of the wild, their bond and courage shining even as the unthinkable unfolded. By the time the forest fell silent once more, their voices were gone, replaced only by the whispers of the wind through the trees and the distant call of a bird. If you found this video insightful, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for the latest videos on wildlife safety, survival tips, and fascinating animal stories. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.